We are live. Folks can let me know here if the music is a bit loud, but that should be good. Welcome to our Board Boosters discussion.
That is what we're doing.
Welcome to our board. That's it. That's the entire intro here.
That's it.
Welcome everybody to our Board Boosters kickoff discussion of our spooky October Board Boost game, Oregon Trail Director's Cut. We have today a couple guests on the channel for our very first kickoff discussion. We have, and I'll let them introduce themselves in a second. We haven't done a kickoff discussion in the past, and you may see more of this kind of activity. We hope to do more of this kind of activity in the future. Some games may warrant it, some may not, but our goal is to strive for more of this sort of thing. Today we're going to be talking about some of the ins and outs of Oregon Trail Director's Cut, how to get into the speed runs, some aspects of the speed run that folks have been looking into a lot. And I will say this is one of the things that has allowed us to do this event, is that people were very keen before October started and dived right into the game, looking for ways to make it faster. So I am Zarek. I'm one of the Board Boosters mods. You've seen me and heard me talk. I'm going to let the other two folks we have here introduce themselves. And why don't we start off with Latalis?
Hello, I am Latalis. I am a variety streamer. However, I've been kind of dabbling in speedruns lately as far as, branching out content. And I've been doing a lot of research on how Oregon Trail works.
Hello. I'm Aces10. I am a newbie speedrunner, newbie member to the Board Boosters. I think I sort of stumbled in from the Zero Counts community. I'm not really a streamer or anything, so just happy to be here. Pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So we are going to, I'll just go over a little bit of what we plan on talking about, folks. If you have questions in chat or things that you want to raise, please go ahead and do it. This is a fairly flexible discussion, and the guests we have here know a lot about the game beyond what we're even going to be able to have time to talk about today. So we're definitely going to talk about a little bit about the game. What does it mean to actually do a run of the game? Because you'll notice when you boot it up, there's different modes and different aspects, and you're not going to be able to do it all at once. We're going to talk about, in the context of the any percent speedrun, the importance of things like rationing, pace, scavenging, trade, and a few other things. And in the latter half of the hour, we're going to talk a bit about some of the particular things folks have looked into, like repairs, health in the game, and some of the strategies going between towns potentially. Now, like I say, feel free to jump in if you have any other questions or any things that you want to raise. Before we jump into any of the finer points, just as a bit of a background for folks who haven't, maybe you haven't had time yet to look particularly heavily into anything. I'm just pulling up the speedrun.com page for this. Oregon Trail, the Director's Cut, is 2011 game. It's a bit of an older game. You can get it on Steam. You can get it on Switch, I think. The current world record is 13 minutes, 57 seconds for the any percent category, which uses the game's DLC. And then there's another category on speedrun.com for the any percent category without the DLC, which is 23 minutes. So the DLC really cuts down the time. There is another category which, as a group, I think we've discussed creating for this game, for a mini game or sub game or an extra game that comes with the package called Clement's Quest. So that is there anything more that I wanted to go over? Just a bit of a background. It's Oregon Trail is a reimagining of the game Oregon Trail, which is very famous. Many of you will have heard about before, if not everyone. That came out in the 1980s as an educational game for schools. I think in the American Midwest or something like that originally.
Something like that.
And this is like a spooky horror reimagining with zombies. Anything you folks want to add about the sort of the background of the game before we jump into some of the mechanics and other thoughts?
I can give a couple of little tidbits, factoids.
Mm-hmm.
So for anybody who hasn't played it yet, it is, although a modern game, completely stylized to be like it was running on an Apple II. And so it has this very clunky feel. Everything's very slow. Feels like it's loading from a floppy disk, and you can almost hear the grinding of the 5 1/4 floppy. But the game actually started as a free Flash game on the developer's website, and had a basically royalty-free music soundtrack. It was very basic, built by 2 people, and they decided to commercialize it, put it on Steam, on the app stores, and eventually came out with DLC for it. It's actually had a pretty long history. It's pretty cool.
Very cool. It's like one of the success stories of the Flash game to full release games that you rarely hear about. Okay, so why don't we continue on then with some discussion about the game. I do want to mention before we go any further here, I'm very happy that we have both of you here on the stream. You've both sunk an incredible amount of time into this game, even before October started. And I think that the entire Board Boosters group thanks you for the thoughts and the work you've put into it, and all the information you've shared. There are also other runners who've been working on the game as we get started here with this, and I do want to mention just a few folks like Uchi, who's also very committed and busy with Defenders of Dynatron City in the last boost, has also been putting up some times and put up a really impressive really impressive time for the any percent category this morning, which I think is really cool. There's also David TKI has been doing a little bit of work on this. Some other folks, Zephyr has been doing runs, and it's just really exciting to see folks really running with this stuff right out the gate. It's really, really cool, and I think it's going to help folks who maybe they don't have time right away and they're planning on doing it later in the month, but it is exactly what Board Boosters is meant to do, is help people build off each other and run with it, which is really, really cool. So before we jump into any of the specifics, do you want to just talk about you jumped in right away? What were the first things you noticed? What are some of the things that you want to say, if you were trying to explain to someone what they had to do to get a run done right from scratch?
Well, Aces has been kind of spearheading that charge. They've done a few videos on that, so I think they should take the lead on this question.
Sure, I can hop in. So the first thing you'll realize is that the game is just very heavily RNG based. When you start running it, you're going to feel like there's just so many things that are out of your control. And so a game can be going what feels like great and go terribly wrong, or vice versa. It can seem like the end is near, and then you might get the trade you're looking for, or the scavenge you're looking for, and then all of a sudden you're back on track and you can finish a run. So it can vary wildly very quickly.
So before we get into that aspect of it though, if you sat someone down in front of this game, booted it up for the first time, what would you have to tell them to do?
To do unlocks and stuff, you mean?
Yeah, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, for the speedrun, we have determined that getting the UFO first is kind of the main criteria before you're going to start doing runs. Aces did a lot of digging into what the strategies were for that, so thank you for that one, Aces. And in order to get the UFO, there's another unlock you need, which is to get the Survivor, which requires you to do Endless Mode, get to 10,000 miles in Endless Mode. That unlocks the Survivor. You start up a campaign mode as the Survivor, get to Area 51, get a UFO. And those are the main points before you can start doing runs.
And that's a considerable time investment. All of us can tell you that.
Yes. So I tried to do endless. I had seen that Aces had essentially done endless mode in one sitting, and so I thought, okay, well, I'll get a head start on the month. I'll just sit down and do endless mode, and then in October I'll start doing runs. But I had to try endless mode 4 times, and it actually frankly took me many hours to get a run done because I had messed up a couple times. And this is not a quick endeavor. It does take a couple hours to get through endless mode, to unlock the Survivor skin in the game, which is the prerequisite for the UFO that you get in a different type of run, right?
And I will say one thing, Zarek. You sort of opened up something I hadn't really thought about. So in my video, I talked about how just blowing through the modifiers for Endless, there's a screen where you can sort of choose some things that are either going to make the game a little bit harder, a little bit easier, and they affect the end score. Because the idea of Endless is that it's obviously not for speedrunners, it's to try to get the best score, the highest score, right? But Zarek sort of, because you had tried it so many times, you sort of started to unlock some new things on that screen. So you started actually making the game a little bit easier for yourself. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are modifiers. You can imagine they call them skulls in the game, and I think it's very reminiscent of like skulls in Halo that adjust the game and make it either more interesting or more difficult or what have you. If you unlock a few of these things, there are modifiers they change the score, but we don't care about the score. We're not playing for the score. We're just playing to unlock the survivor skin in endless mode. And so even what I did was, because I'd failed a few times, I was able to have more of these skull unlocks and make the run easier. But before folks who have just simply not loaded the game, I do want to raise a couple points here. And there may be people who never played Oregon Trail and are not familiar with like some of these older games. The way that the game is you have a vehicle, you have like a couple characters' names, and you are meant to go town by town, and then their health is adjusted downward essentially every couple moments. The health of your vehicle is adjusted down. How much fuel you have is adjusted down every time that the game moves you forward, like just linearly on the screen. And so the endless mode, you're trying to stay alive as long as you can, driving from town to town, which are just text screens with a picture. And you can buy things in the towns. You can do like these like weird little mini games to repair your stuff and to get more things. Then that's essentially it. That's the game. And in campaign mode, you at the end you arrive at the ending town. In endless mode, you just continue to go town from town. As things tick over and events pop up. But it's just it's seemingly RNG that these things just happen to you.
For sure. Endless mode is very much a struggle of your supply lines and survival, basically.
Yeah. So just to be very clear on this point, because I think that there might be some folks who get a bit confused about this. I don't think really, but I want to be totally clear for folks who might, that the endless mode, you're going from town to town. You have to get 10,000 miles under your belt, which is just a certain number of ticks or a certain distance you have to have the vehicle travel. Then you unlock a skin by virtue of having completed that task. Then you have to play in the campaign mode, where there's a map and you can choose which towns you go to, which is not the case in Endless. And then you can go to Area 51. You have a special encounter that is then only generated as a result of you having unlocked that skin. And you fight a UFO, getting a new vehicle, which allows you to go faster in the campaign for the speedrun. Anything more we want to go about, like how that works for folks?
I could
go for it, Aces. What were you saying?
Oh, I was just going to say, I want to make sure everybody understands that this is a very accessible run. I think we've maybe already sort of tried to couch it a little bit, like here's all the things you got to do. Understand, we've got videos for this stuff. There's a whole Discord full of stuff now. So don't feel intimidated by any of this. It's actually really fun to learn. And it's a small step. Endless is a small step in your journey. Once you get there, you will feel great about it, but you'll have a whole new world open. So don't be intimidated.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
So why don't we chat a bit?
I was going to say that
go ahead.
Can talk a little bit about how vehicles move and how that's sort of calculated if we want to.
Yes.
We kind of brought that up.
The next sort of group of things that we did want to chat about are things like rationing, pace, scavenging trades. Why don't we start with ticks, and we'll go on from there with these other topics.
For sure. So in-game intervals, I will say, are sort of hourly ticks. They'll be represented by time of day as you progress through, as your car moves and as you hit towns and stuff. Scavenging is an activity that you can do from the sort of menu screen when you're like camping. You can stop your vehicle at any time. Getting to a town stops your vehicle. You have access to these menus. So anything like resting, scavenging, trading, those all take a single hour tick to execute. And I mean, in Endless, that affects your score, but again, we're not really cared about score here. But time of day can affect other types of things, such as zombie activity. Zombies are more effective at night. So if you're trying to scavenge at night, you might not have as good of a time. Um, that's kind of all I can really say about hourly ticks. Vehicles have a set distance they will travel on an hour tick as they're moving. Yeah, that's kind of the gist.
All your statuses, if you have illnesses or starving ticks, you're gonna lose health on those ticks. So it's sort of the lifeblood of the game is that one tick is gonna come next, and then that's your next opportunity to do a new decision.
Yes, it's kind
Right.
of turn-based in that regard.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so every time your vehicle moves on the road, every time you sleep for an hour, every time you do a scavenge, you make a trade, an hour ticks by in the game. That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm confirming because you folks know better than I do exactly how it works. I can't think of an action where it doesn't, but so that's sort of like the hourly progression piece. Now you, as the player, you have to manage a number of different things: character health, the vehicle, all that sort of thing. But we all just kill all the characters at the beginning. Do you want to explain why we do that?
Aces?
Well, yeah, yes, that has been the world record strategy up to this point is to essentially treat your party members as if they're mouths to feed. And so the whole idea is to sort of take a small set of resources and stretch them as far as possible. Because obviously the less you use as you go along the run, the more you'll have as you get towards the end, the less effort you have to expend getting new resources. But we're actually looking into some ways that may change soon. So, but yeah, the world record right now does basically dismiss, we'll say, your party members immediately, and then you travel along. You're fired. You move along the map alone, which was probably not the developer's intention, but he did put the option in there.
Right.
That's true.
And
the game basically comes with a mercy kill option for if your teammates get infected by zombie bites. But that option is available from effectively hour tick 1 when you start campaign or endless. And removing mouths to feed is an effective way of stretching your resources.
it's almost reminiscent, if I can just do like a quick aside, it's almost reminiscent of that movie, The Mist, right? Like that movie remake of the Stephen King book. In the movie, and I'm going to spoil it, but it's been out for over a decade, so I'm happy to do it. But in that movie, at the end, it's like they're totally out of hope, and then they have this like murder-suicide pact, and everyone in the car kills themselves, except for the main character, and then the clouds clear, and everyone's happy, and they didn't have to do it. It was totally fine. But yeah, it's sort of reminiscent of that because you like kill off your entire party, and then you go and you like live a happy life at the end. But okay, so we were killing people because they're mouths to feed. That raises the question of and I know we might not always be doing that. The strategy could change. We're day 1, so we're giving folks like a general overview of how it works. But the why, like when we're talking about mouths to feed, let's talk about rationing and what that actually means. So you have a certain amount of food, sometimes that you start off with, sometimes you don't. Do you want to explain like how food works, what rationing means, and we can move on to pace perhaps after that?
For sure. In endless mode, you tend to start with some amount of food. Aces is experimenting in campaign with starting with no food. He can talk about that in a second. But you can adjust the rationing portions, very similar to Oregon Trail, the classic game. Meager, normal, extravagant rations, essentially. And every hour tick that goes by for every character in your party that's alive, they will consume a set amount of food from your stockpile. So if the game starts you with yourself, the leader, and then 4 additional. So if you don't kill your friends off, they will start consuming essentially 5 times the normal amount of food you otherwise would. With just yourself, you consume either 1, 2, or 3, depending on your rations. That can go up to 5, 10, or 15.
Aces, do you want to talk about maybe just why we wouldn't kill them off? Because it sounds like economical. Like if 5 people are going to use the food 5 times faster, why don't we just have 1? So why would we not do that right now?
Yeah, so there is a mechanic we've discovered in the game. Well, I say mechanic, it may be an unintentional mechanic, it may be a bug, but it's going to become a speedrun feature. So basically, if you start the run with 0 food and you have your 4 party members with you, your party members start to lose health from starving, right? From having no food each tick. But we realized that your main character does not. While you have party members alive and they're starving, your main character will not lose health, and the main character is the only one we actually worry about to get to the end. And so we don't really know why it's happening, but as long as you have one live party member, your main character doesn't take any starvation damage. Now, as soon as they all go to what's called incapped or incapacitated status, that actually sort of breaks that bug. They start eating again, or basically you start taking damage for not eating, I should say. But they're still in an eating status, so they still require food. So you can't buy food yet. It's this weird little phase where your main character has started taking starving damage, but you still have party members who are eating, so you can't buy food to stop that, to stave that off. So you kind of have to wait for them to go from incapped to gone. At which case, once all 4 party members are gone, then it's the game as normal as you would expect it to be. So then we just start buying food, but you can buy much less that way.
Some other facets of food are another sort of feature or bug, perhaps, has to deal with resting ticks and how that heals your character, and that depends on the rationing you have set. Low rations where you only eat 1 food don't heal as much as, say, if you were eating 3 food per hour tick. And one of the quirks of the resting mechanic is when you have it doesn't have to even be a full party. As long as 1 person in your party is alive, if you do a rest tick, those party members will heal, but your leader will not. It's kind of similar to how the leader doesn't take hunger damage until everyone else is dead. When your party is dead, you can heal for free in resting. That's another reason we would want our characters to all die off. And so you could either firing squad them or starve them to death, and then you get down to that single character, and then you can heal for free infinitely many times, as long as you have food.
Yes.
Okay. So the food healing, like starving mechanics are similar to the pace mechanics. And so you have to keep your main character alive to beat the game, and you have to keep your car running to get to the end of the game. So why don't we talk about pace and the health of the car as well, because it's a similar concept, and maybe if folks think of it that way, it'd be helpful.
Sure. I've been doing a lot of research on this, mostly in endless mode because it gives me the most data to work with. Should we pull up the spreadsheet, do you think? Or should I just kind of
that's fine if you want to pull it up.
elaborate
Absolutely,
on
yeah.
it? Sure. Okay. Let's go ahead and screen cap that. This is the wrong page. Okay. Vehicle statistics. Let me know when you are ready for me to start talking about it.
Yeah, folks in the chat will be able to see it shortly. Hopefully, I can't really see it myself right now. Oh, there we go. Yeah, folks in the chat should be able to see it pretty quick.
Okay. Should I increase size, perhaps?
Perhaps, yeah.
Up to
And
150.
Folks out there, don't worry if you can't see any of like the finer details of this. It is available for you to open up and take a look at.
I can share the link in chat as well if you would.
That's great. Yeah.
If you guys would like. As long as I'm allowed to share links. Yes, perfect. So yeah, in this spreadsheet, I've done a number of different analysis. I've got the car repair minigame, which was the first thing I worked on. Here we have the vehicle wear and tear spreadsheet. I've done some calculations. The station wagon is the car you start out with. It's got sort of a loose representation of how good it is with these bars. The UFO has more stats, which is why we like the UFO. And each vehicle has 99 health. I did make sure to double check that several times because you might assume durability means more health. In fact, it just means a slight multiplier reduction, I guess, on how much damage you would take per tick. And then here we have some representations of how fast your vehicles will move. Again, we have station wagon and UFO. Essentially, the UFO gets 4 extra distance, and miles in this case, over the station wagon in all categories. So 49, 4 greater than 45, 64 greater than 60, So it's 2+ in stats, roughly translates to +4 distance per tick.
So
and weather reduces.
If I could just slow you down really quick, I don't want to interrupt your flow too much, but for folks watching at home, you'll remember we're on a straight line between 2 towns. So every tick, the vehicle is moving a certain amount down that road, and it tells you how far it is to the next town when you click to go there. And so what we're doing is when our pace is higher, we're getting fewer stops, right? So every hour the game stops and there's a random event. And so when our car is going at a faster pace, it's getting to the next town with fewer events happening, which is saving time. That's the speed run.
Yes, that is the general gist of how that would work. Say Chicago and Omaha. I don't know the exact distance between them, but I think there's like one or two towns between. I think one. So you would travel from Chicago to Middletown, and then from the Middletown to Omaha in the speedrun, and that distance is a fixed amount of distance. And so you would have a faster vehicle. You could cover that distance faster, essentially. And again, every tick, like Zarek just said, every tick it updates the distance you've traveled by the specific number, and that number is fixed. Weather does have it, and whenever things get decimaled, so what's half of 49? It'd be 24.5. It always rounds down. So if you're going normal pace and you're in rain, then you're going to actually be doing less than half of how far you would normally travel. That's kind of how that works. And then we have how much damage you take on the hour tick. And this is kind of the meat and potatoes of this specific sheet, is exactly how efficient is it to be going different paces. Because you can adjust the car, just like how you can adjust rationing from low, medium, high, you can go pace, low, medium, high, which will, similar to how rationing affects your character's health, this will affect your vehicle's health. And as we can see, I'm not going to go into what every single data point is, but you take an average amount of damage. This bottom section is the UFO, which is what we use in the speedrun. The average amount of damage per tick that the UFO will suffer is about 4.5 points of health. I'm still experimenting on whether rational, like fractional health is a thing. I don't think it is. I think it is only whole numbers. So, it's things. And this is kind of the durability calculation. The UFO has +2 durability over the station wagon. When you're using the turbo pace, which is how fast you want to go in the speedrun, you save about 15% of HP over the station wagon. As you travel slower, that is much higher because the slower you're traveling, the less damage you take. But again, the goal is to go fast. So what we really care about is how much damage we're taking on turbo, which are these.
So I will also just pause here to say, on behalf of everyone, this is an incredible amount of information you've collected, and thank you very much. And for folks like watching who are like, how did Latalis do this? She literally just like stayed up late every day this week playing this fucking game on Endless and like counting how much damage it took, every time that an hour ticked by. It's just incredible. So a couple questions I have then, like it seems like the damage we're taking on the turbo pace is significantly more than what we're getting from the normal pace. Are we switching between turbo and normal? Are we trying to save our ship or our station wagon at some point?
That is
Aces, is that something that we're looking at?
I would like to experiment with. Sorry, you're asking Aces, but that is something I want to experiment with.
I'm asking Aces because I know that Aces is doing it. That's why I'm at. It's not like I'm done with you, Latalis. It's just because I know Aces is, so I want to hear what he has to say.
Go for it.
So there's some strategy in this, right? If you look at the way that the stops are laid out, starting from DC, there's basically, we haven't really talked about this, but there's two types of towns when you arrive. There is an auto shop town, which has one upgrade available for your car, and then there's the combat dealer, which has one combat upgrade available. The ones that have auto upgrades also have what's called the auto shop. The auto shop is a place where you can go and actually trade money, the currency in the game, for repair points on your car. The only other way to repair your car is using what's called a resource we haven't talked about yet called scrap. And basically you trade scrap for being able to do a mini game. It's like a time-based mini game, and we want to do that mini game as few times as possible because it takes time. It's a timed event, and it burns off time in the speed run. Whereas when you do it in the auto shop, it's instant. You tap the button, you get a set amount. And although as you progress west on the map, repairs start to get more expensive. So it's another thing we're managing throughout the run. So to get back to your question, the stops they alternate. combat, auto as you're going through the map until you get to Albuquerque. On the speed run route, once you get to Albuquerque, instead of being every other, there's actually 2 stops between. So right now I'm playing with, once we get to Albuquerque, drop down to normal pace because there is such a substantial reduction in damage to your vehicle. It's keeping me from having to repair so often. So I'm trying to play around with, if I drop to normal for that span from Albuquerque all the way to Salt Lake City, and then once I get to Salt Lake, go back to turbo because now I'm 2 towns away to get to Safe Haven. So that's what we're looking at right now.
Right, that makes sense. So Safe Haven, just for folks who haven't gone through the game yet, is the end. That's the last place you have to get to.
Yeah. I actually didn't know you were experimenting with that, Aces. That's pretty cool.
Yep. And that I'm calling that the David strat for right now because that's actually David TKI's suggestion. He was
Nice.
working on it, and that's just something I've been able to grind along with him to see how it works.
That David TKI, very impressive.
Something I would like to personally experiment with is, because in campaign it is a set distance, you could actually calculate how many ticks of 64 you can get into that, and then if there's going to be 1 extra tick, you could just switch to normal to save like 3 health. That might just be a little too slow because you have to menu to do that, but it is an idea.
You laugh, but that's actually a worthwhile calculation to make, Latalis. I think, in my opinion, like it's like trying to get a faster time in a Super Mario Brothers level when you're not saving a frame rule, right? Like it doesn't make a difference because you could just, it would be easier and not save that time.
The calculation for that would depend on the time you spend using scrap to do the repair game, which we can talk about later. If it saves you having to do that, then it would save time overall, basically. Aces, you were about to say something. I cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I was going to ask Latalis, will you go to the first tab on this sheet? I want to show something that scroll down to the bottom right below. Keep right there. Okay. So average repair per second was a way more important stat than I thought it was ever going to be. There's a lot to be learned from these 3 graphs because there's a lot that intuition tells you, your gut tells you when you're playing these games, and then you look at Latalis's numbers, and they bear out very differently. And so it's this is very important work because there was a lot of arguments and back and forth, not arguments, but debate about which was better. There's 3 options when you go do the repair mini game: 2 scrap, 4 scrap, and 8 scrap. And my gut was always telling me 2 is more efficient. 8 takes a lot of time because you have to wait for the game to play 8 times. You're clicking 8 different little bobbles. So it always felt like, okay, 4 is the middle ground. That's the way to go. That's the way the world record does it. But there's actually a lot here to learn from the average repair per second. I was worried about repair per scrap, but Latalis very cleverly timed these out, and it's substantial to go with the 8.
Yeah, it's about 1 repair per second versus with 4, slightly less than 1 on a single repair. These are back-to-back repair ticks. So 1 repair, 2 repairs, 3 repairs back-to-back. As you have to wait for, because when you do any action, you have like an hour tick. So, and then there's also a 3-second countdown at the start of the minigame, which costs time. So you get diminishing returns the more you do back-to-back. Yes. But if you're just doing 1 repair and you have enough scrap to do an 8 repair and you know it's going to repair you about 17 health most of the time, then 8 repair is generally the way to go there to save time.
Is it possible, because we did talk about this before, but do either of you want to, Aces, I don't know if this is something you could do, bring up the game perhaps? And we can have a quick look at like what this actually looks like for folks when they're clicking through the first few steps of like what the repair game looks like, and when then that, like, because we're looking at numbers right now. I for folks who've loaded up the game, this makes a lot of sense and it is very incredibly helpful. But I just want to bridge that gap if we can, and we can go back to this spreadsheet afterwards as well too.
For sure. You can switch between us.
So this is the home screen here, folks.
I'm not sure if I'm live. I don't know if it's just on my end.
Yeah, we can see you. Don't worry.
Okay, very good. All right. So yeah, so this is the main menu. We'll go ahead and go in here, start a new game. So you have the option between campaign and endless here. So when we're talking about doing an endless run to 10,000, that's going to be this guy. The speed run is done on campaign mode. Opportunity here to choose between 4 difficulties. We just choose easy because we want to make it easy for ourselves. So you get to choose a character and avatar here for the main character. You get to choose for whether you want to play the intro or not. The first time, the intro is not skippable, so you have to play it once, but afterwards you can. And then we're going to name our characters. Oops.
I don't know who
I
Ace's
volunteer to
plus
be
10 is,
starved
but
to
it's some
death.
other person. Yeah, you can go ahead and starve me to death if you want.
So you pick your party members, you get 4 party members. And then this is the area where we're going to choose. Normally you'd start with the station wagon. So if you're new to the game, you're going to start here. But I have the UFO unlocked. As you can see, 5 stats all the way across. But actually, you don't get any of the other unlocks once you choose the UFO. Worth knowing. And then this is the supply screen. So basically, this is the when you're starting off, and I forget the town's name in Oregon Trail, where you get to basically go to all the shops and choose what you're going to take with you, how many oxen, how many yokes, blah blah blah. This is Oregon Trail's version of that. So how much fuel are you going to take? We actually haven't talked about all the different resources that you're managing in the game. Fuel is one of them. We usually take 32.
I will stop you here and just say the amount of things we take in these categories right now is not solved. We have not figured out exactly
Correct.
what is the best strategy, and it is a critical element of best practice that we have to resolve or figure out, and it's probably going to be the entire month we're trying to adjust it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a lot of the speed run is setting yourself up for success. Even in the world records, they'll take supplies, but then they also scavenge twice immediately. The reason they do it immediately is because we've sort of divined that scavenging is more effective on the east side of the map when you're first starting out. Then as you progress, it gets a little bit harder. And when I say harder, it's actually the drops are less frequent. And so they're trying to maximize that ahead of time when the scavenging is quote unquote easy. And so they're trying to build up a little reserve so that they're setting themselves up for success for the rest of the game. So we usually take something like this. This is sort of the loadout that we kind of started playing with. The idea here is you got a little bit of everything so that you can start off, head down the trail, and then start reacting to what the game does for you, right? What if it takes some money from you, if it takes some food from you, then you can sort of start to change your strategy and adapt to that. Is there anything else you guys want to touch on here?
I think this particular loadout is probably one of the more consistent strategies for people who just want to kind of experiment with the run casually to start with. And then as you learn more, like the starving strategy, for example, you don't take food. That's kind of something you can experiment with. But for I think people doing like their first speedrun, I think this is the loadout you'll want to do.
Exactly.
It's just a little bit more consistent.
Yeah, I think
So
I think jumping in is probably best. I don't have any other things on this screen. I have so much I could say, but I don't know if it's helpful if we're just going to go to see it in a second here.
I'll briefly just run down these. So fuel, that's gas for your car. Med kit, this is an instant heal on your characters. You can use these on your party members. You're probably only going to use them on your own main character though. Money is a currency that can be used to more or less trade for anything else. There are stores at each of the towns where it's possible to buy and sell goods, and money is the currency that's used for that. So it's kind of a catch-all. Batteries, mufflers, and tires, something we haven't talked about yet, but there are 3 individual pieces of the car that can break along the way. The random events can cause these to sort of independent of the health stat of your car. These 3 things are sort of the spare yokes that you have to carry along with you to keep your car in good repair, to keep it moving forward. So if you don't have any tires and you pop a tire, you're sitting on the side of the road waiting to be able to trade with another traveler who comes along, and you might be able to trade for one of your batteries, one of their tires, to get back up on the road. Ammo is kind of it's a weird one because you pretty much only use ammo in the scavenge screens to shoot zombies. However, as Bug Doctor pointed out earlier, if you're going to do the strategy where you dismiss your party members at the very start of the game, you need 4 ammo to do that. So if you start with none It's not possible to do that, and it's embarrassing when you do it on a speed run. Thank you, Bug Doctor. Um, and then food, of course, is the resource your party's consuming. Like Latalis said, based on your ration size, 1, 2, or 3 ounces per party member. So we start off. The intro to the game when you play it, Clements leaves you here at Washington, D.C. That's why we start in Washington. And you're basically navigating the map east to west, and we're trying to get to Safe Haven. So similar to the Oregon Trail, you're trying to get to the Willamette Valley. We're trying to get to Safe Haven.
Just on this screen, I will say, why did they nuke the Dakotas, right? Like, these are not high-value
wouldn't you
targets
nuke
by
the
any stretch.
Dakotas?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you?
I've seen no lore yet to explain that. I don't know why. I've questioned this myself. This is a very strange. I get here. I understand here. I don't understand why the hate for this area particularly. Sorry.
Maybe the developers just didn't know enough about those states, so rather than researching, they just decided to nuke them.
Well, I think if we had to get real deep and dirty, it's to make the route a little bit longer, right? It's not just
Probably,
a complete east to west trek. But yeah, it is kind of curious. So you always get this yeah, I guess you do. You always get an opportunity to sort of decide where you're going. So this DC branches off to both Pittsburgh and what's called the Gorge Bridge. And so you're always sort of given this opportunity. Where do you want to go? What are you going to do? So if I click down here on Gorge Bridge, you're going to see the stats down here change, and what's available there changes. So we have light supplies and a combat upgrade here, and we get the warning that this is a radiation zone. As if we click on Pittsburgh, we see decent supplies because it's a bigger town, and it has a car upgrade instead of a combat upgrade. So we know that this is an auto shop stop, whereas this is a combat stop.
That's something that it takes a while to totally figure out if you haven't been told. Like, you can see if you're going to be able to upgrade the car in the next town. It's very important for Endless, where the towns are not set, so you can pick auto shop as much as possible.
Mhm.
Right. There's no RNG in the campaign version for the stop style. So if you go to the Gorge Bridge and it's combat once, it's going to be combat always. If you go and it's an auto, it's always going to be auto. So
Yeah.
those things don't change. So you can plan your route based on that. Like I said, it alternates on the speedrun route, combat auto until Albuquerque.
Yes, as we said, campaign is fixed in how it does, which you'll actually, we talked about this briefly, the mileage there is always going to be the same, which
Yes.
will allow you to sort of decide what pace you could do, which
So-
is something I'm going to work on eventually.
Do we want to go through the first few ticks, and then we can show people like the health
Sure.
tick, the vehicle ticks, and like some of the like things that we're doing at the beginning?
Sure. So I'll go ahead and hit embark here. That's going to kick us off. I'm going to go ahead and do Pittsburgh. This is not the speedrun route, but there's a reason I'm going to go this direction first. So game starting off, we haven't initiated anything yet, although the speedrun timer is running at this point because it starts the moment we hit OK on the supply screen. The game's technically not really quote unquote running just yet. So I'm going to click once and it's going to start us on our travels.
So now we're in that
And
first
we're
hour
off.
here.
Yes, that was the first tick. So if I go here to my supplies, I can see that 1 tick of fuel has burned off. So every 1 hour tick burns a quarter of 1 can of gas. You can see our party members have also consumed food. We started with 125 ounces of food. First tick has already burned off. What would that be? 2 times 5, I guess? Yeah, 20 ounces right off the
Medium
bat.
rations, yeah.
Yep, exactly. You can see where we're going to our next city, how far along that is, and how far have we traveled. This is total, not since the last stop. This is to the next stop.
And you can see this is where
Well-
this is like Latalis was like, this is how many miles you're traveling in good weather. We can see that borne out
Yep.
here, 49 miles right there. That's the figure, right?
Exactly. We're in the UFO going the medium pace, right? So that was the number that we got there. And you can see here we've popped up with a random event. Now these don't always have to happen. And in the speed run, we basically mash through these. We just spam clicking because we want them to pop up and go away as quickly as possible. This one's pretty innocuous. I stopped, stretched my legs, hung out for this tick. Nothing happened. We didn't lose any supplies. We didn't find any supplies. Nobody got bit. So this is a pretty innocuous one. This is a good one to get. There can be some pretty bad ones. So we'll go ahead and click through the next tick here. So again, the game's technically sort of not running yet. We're going to click again and it's going to go. So click. And there's a little pause here. Feels like the game's not doing anything. Sorry, Bug Doctor. So
Can't take you anywhere, Bug.
I can flip over here to our party status, and you can see I have not taken any health. The UFO has taken a little bit of damage. Some of the other party members have taken sort of a normal amount of damage, but Bug Doctor, having gotten mauled, has taken a substantial amount of damage now.
We should put him out of his
We are
misery,
on
to be
normal
honest.
pace. We are on normal pace. Average amount of damage the UFO takes on normal pace is 1.77. You'll see we've lost roughly 3 or 4. So, math.
Yes. So we'll go ahead and click again here, and you can see the sun is doing its thing. So we got an event here. This is not a great one. Nothing happened to our party, but basically we're having to wait an hour. You saw the sun actually tick 1 hour without fading, like it didn't transition. It just popped there. And it's because basically this event auto ticked us an hour, more or less. And so basically we're getting held up 1 hour because of this event.
And also, we're also
And
not
food
progressing. Like
consuming,
the vehicle's not moving to
Right.
the next town, and so it is costing us time.
and you still consume food on the hour tick, even if you're not moving.
Exactly. Yep. And this is essentially the same, like it's the same style event, right? It's basically a delay event. Says we're cleaning some guts out of our car, but it's again, we're basically just hung up here. So we're going to click again. And finally, we're on the road.
Hey,
So this is
weather.
Yeah, this is a weather event. I'll let Latalis take over here, but basically we can see the graphics of the rain, and this is something that will happen occasionally on the road, completely random, but it affects travel. So go ahead, Latalis.
Again, when you're in a weather, doesn't matter what type of weather, you will always go half the normal pace. Like I said, right now we're on medium pace for the UFO, which is 49. So we should be moving about 24 every hour tick. And weather tends to last between, I'd say, 2 and 4 ticks, typically 3, I feel.
And so, one of the finer points about weather, so they are random. Like the weather events don't always happen at the same time. And if you get a weather event, you can click on that stop button, and it takes you to a screen where you can do those things we were talking about, scavenging and changing things like that, and wait out the weather by doing other activities.
Yes.
True.
Yeah. So if, basically, we got the end of the sky, or the end of the weather event there, just because it did basically tick off, so to speak. It burned off. But when I've hit that stop button, you see it's sort of like pausing here, waiting for input, because it wants me to click through this tick, and then it will decide to stop. So when I click here again, we're going to move 1 tick, and then it'll stop. So this is kind of a queued up command here. So we still get the window first. Basically, it says we hit a nasty bump, and we lost 2 med kits. So we just straight off the bat here, nothing done. We're not even to our first spot yet, and we've already lost supplies.
Before you click off, real quick, it is worth noting that we went from 35 miles to next landmark, and now you see it's 0. You cannot overshoot the distance. So if you were going turbo 64 miles per tick, you would be taking turbo amount of damage for basically the same distance as a normal pace tick. And so that's kind of something to keep in mind for more advanced strategies of the speedrun.
Well, actually, so let's hold on here for a second, because that's actually a really interesting piece. So you're saying that if we are like 49 miles or less to the next town, you could quickly click stop, adjust your pace, and then go into the town and adjust it back to turbo to leave the town?
Correct. Yeah, because
That's
you can't
fascinating.
overshoot, but you still take the same amount of damage based on your pace that you have set. If you know you're going to be hitting a town at some sort of interval that doesn't like mesh with turbo, but would still it wouldn't cost you an additional tick to be on normal pace, you can very quickly switch. Again, it would cost a bit of menuing, but it would save on HP.
And it's worth pointing out also that regardless of which of the 3 paces you're on, you'll always burn a quarter can of gas.
Bokonon asks a question about how long that menuing would take. If you got pretty fast fingers, maybe a second or 2.
Could you show that menuing in the next, like after we get through this town?
Sure. So I'm going to click here, and it's going to take us into the stop. It'll probably take us actually into the town. So let's see what it does. Yeah. So here we get a splash screen telling us where we're at, and every stop basically has its own unique splash screen here. But for the speed run, that's a little annoying because there is a load time, a quote unquote load time that's happening here that you can be spamming mouse and it's not going to advance through. So basically, you have to kind of wait for this transition to happen and then you can click through it.
I don't know why they didn't do like a picture of Pittsburgh from after the apocalypse. They just did this regular one of Pittsburgh.
That is odd. So if we head over to car here, we can see set pace here, slow, normal, turbo. And then also under supplies, the rationing that we were talking about, small, medium, large. And there's some help text up here to talk about what those things do. Same for the pace, 34, 49, and 64. Obviously, these change based on which vehicle you're running. So I think what you wanted to see here was sort of the speed of the menuing.
Well, what I'm hoping is after you leave the town, after you leave the town, if on the way you could just stop, change the pace, and then get going again to show how quickly it can be done.
Sure. So I'll try to do this as quick as possible. So we're going to leave here. It's going to pop up a little menu that asks, do I want to stay or go? And I'm going to go ahead and say, yes, I want to leave. That's just a confirmation menu. So we're going to go head back to the road here when I do this, and we'll try to execute as quickly as possible just to show the timing on this. So yes, we're going to embark. Now we're getting a scripted event here. So this was sort of unfortunate, but we're going to hit a scripted event here. This is similar to the when you come to a river in Oregon Trail.
Fording a river, yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to cock the wagon and float? Do you want to ford the river? Do you want to wait? And so basically we have some options here to get some guns out and try to clear a path, which means our party members will fight for us, or we try to go quietly and sneak through. The other option is to wait and see how the horde status changes.
And just before you continue on here, I will say in Endless, when you're doing this with the station wagon, you do have to make a decision about whether you want to wait and see if the horde disperses, which can make them into docile and make it easier to sneak through, or just like fight your way through. In the speedrun, it's not a question, but in Endless, that is something you just have to think about a little bit.
Yes. Yeah. So we'll do the fun one. We'll do breakout guns. We get to see our party members blasting. And the UFO will run over some as well. So like I said, this is scripted. You can't skip this, and it happens. There are certain towns where it happens every time. I think it also can be random, but it is scripted in certain towns where you're going to go through it. And the interesting part is when the paths fork, at least for the different options in the speed run, I'm pretty sure that you get this event scripted on both paths, which is kind of a weird thing. Okay.
So here we're going to see that pace change, Boko.
Very quick.
Now, that might seem like it does take up a bit of time. That was pretty quick. Here we go again. But what we're doing when we're talking about changing the pace going into a town is you're saving yourself HP, which means that you have to spend less time repairing down the line.
Yes, one of the biggest time sinks in this run will be repairing your vehicle. And so preserving the health of your vehicle, there are some situations where you actually let your vehicle get broken, which Aces will probably get to in a second. But by preserving that HP, you end up saving time overall, even if it takes a second or two to adjust.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. We're looking at all the different optimizations that can bring because the time factor is the big one. It's the amount of time spent repairing. I feel like is a huge potential for optimization there. So yeah. So let's see. Coming up on the next town here, it's called the Mall, and this is actually another interesting optimization. Is that because there are set stops along the route, there are set points where it makes sense to do stuff because you're already going to be in that screen. So you can't skip the transitions that would cost you to get there. So if you're going to do something and you can wait until you get to that upcoming stop, it actually will save you just a little bit of time to do it there instead of on the road.
Yeah. One thing that would be an example of is when you get to a town, it forces open the menu screen, basically. So if you wanted to do menuing, you could wait until you hit a town and you don't need to bother stopping.
It's a big one. Yeah,
exactly. So we come to a what I call a random road event here. So basically, we had a menu or an event pop up that basically said that we've got an event happening and we're going to choose our weapon here. So rifle is a single shot, but it does reload quickly. Shotgun is it's a 3-fer, but it also uses 3 ammo when you shoot it. The pistol is sort of a weird one because it's sort of no pluses in my opinion. You fire it 4 times, unlike the rifle, which reloads on every single shot, and then after the fourth shot you reload, but the reload is much longer. The problem is the rifle is such a quick reload that it's almost doesn't make sense to use the pistol.
It's like a semi-automatic rifle, essentially.
Yeah.
Rifle is definitely the easiest to make happen, in my opinion.
So in this event, you're being surrounded by zombies. They're coming at you from all angles. You can do the same thing as you can do in scavenging. I can't move and turn and shoot. But in the speed run, we actually don't shoot the zombies because it's faster to not survive the scene than it is to kill the zombies, because you basically have a set amount you need to kill. So here we just failed it. In this screen, what's interesting here is that in this particular scene, we can't lose any supplies. We can lose some health I guess we get injured. The station wagon gets injured, but Latalis actually has some interesting thoughts on this. It seems like we don't always get injured.
You've told me that in campaign it doesn't seem to work this way, but in Endless, I have experienced this many times. This event is scripted very strangely, where it says here that the station wagon was damaged. What I've experienced in Endless is there's some sort of miscalling of variables, and the player actually takes the damage, but the vehicle heals for that amount of damage, which is very funny. Whether it's applicable to campaign or not, I have not tested, and I haven't gotten confirmation on that actually working in campaign. But
so
just
somebody in the future will be able to look and see what the health of our vehicle was before. I didn't take notice, and we can compare it to right now.
So if someone wants to take a look at that, actually, right now, you could clip
what
it
do you
and
want
see.
To bet we healed there? Yeah,
I would bet we healed.
Well, yeah, we must have healed. There's no way that we could be at full health.
Precisely.
David says that he thinks it heals as well.
That's
pretty funny.
It does happen. I have seen it happen in campaign. I just can't figure out the mechanic as to when does it do it and when does it not, because I've certainly seen it also give me damage. So I don't know. It's weird. It's strange.
So I do want to say we are coming close to an hour of having chatted about this. That is the time that we had committed to this, and for folks who were just had squared away that amount of time for the event, I do want to say thank you for stopping in and all that sort of thing. If you folks are okay, we can continue on for another few minutes. But I do want to, in this last few minutes we have of the scheduled hour, see if we could chat about the repair. I mean, obviously we can't. We just healed the car to full by accident, but if you could chat about the repair mechanic, that would be very helpful, I think, for folks.
For sure. Aces, if you wanted to switch the car to turbo so it takes more damage, we could also pull up that minigame a little faster.
I'll do that.
Yeah. Let me discuss the minigame. If you wanted to switch to my spreadsheet, I can kind of talk about this while Aces is getting that vehicle destroyed for us.
Okay.
So the first sheet of the spreadsheet here is the car repair minigame analysis. As Aces pointed out, there are three varieties of repair minigame. You can use 2 scrap to repair your vehicle, you can use 4 scrap to repair your vehicle, or 8 scrap. And each has different expected returns, and I've done some math on that. Look at these pretty little charts. You'll see with 2 scrap, it depends on... Grade is an interesting concept. Grade is the overall goodness, I guess, of how well you did the event. It's very abstract. What's really important is how well you do the hits themselves, so much than the grade, because it's not always consistent where the breakpoints are. But what is important about repair is the average amount of repair you can expect from doing the minigame. So for 2 scrap, you would expect to heal about 8 HP. And remember, vehicles have 99 HP, so it would take an awful long time to repair your vehicle up to full. But in the speedrun, you might necessarily need it to be full. You just need to get to the next auto shop to repair. Because you can use money to repair much faster than doing the minigame. The expected healing per second, it needs to be taken into account, that kind of thing. With 4 scrap, you will expect to repair about 11. So you go from 8 to 11, that's like plus 3. Not a huge increase by doing the 4. And as you see, as we're moving along, the actual repair per scrap is reducing. So your scrap efficiency is going down in exchange for repair per second efficiency, as well as bulk healing from a single action. Because remember, hourly ticks take time to happen. And then you get up to 8 repair, which has the greatest yield on actual repair. You get about 17.5 based on my data. I did take Uchi's AAA, which is the best you can ever do.
And Uchi is the only one who's done it so far, I think.
Yeah, I have not managed to do that myself. I did steal it without their permission. It is in the data because they didn't get back to me. And you'll see that the 8 repair is 1 repair per second, which is the most efficient way to repair your vehicle, even if it is the most costly way to repair your vehicle with scrap. And again, my charts, there is some interesting little droopage here, and that has to do with a concept called combo bonus that you tend to see more on the 8 scrap. It's when you get 2 good hits back to back. We can probably switch back to Ace's screen now while they do that minigame. But you'll notice there are 5 types of hits you can do. You can either miss outright, you can nearly miss, you can have an okay hit, a great hit, or a perfect hit. And that'll sort of determine the overall grade, but also like the underlying value of how much you're going to repair. So Aces, show us what's up.
Yeah, so I'm going to just first off say, anything you see here is not reflective of my skill. Everything was done on purpose if it was done badly, okay? So just be aware of that.
Sure.
Yeah, so we come to the screen here. It says basically I've got 10 scrap available to use. Which of the mini games do I want to play? And so we'll do the 4 one here so we can have a couple tries at it. So we'll use 4. And then the idea is to let this guy be right here, and that's what I'm going to click. So you can see I got 1 great, 1 perfect, and 2 near misses. And then we've got some judges who grade us on how did I do. I think Latalis was sort of already mentioning this, but this number and this number are not exactly linked together. They are, but they aren't. So 9 repair here for using
we
4
actually
scrap.
can't see your cursor, Aces. So when you say this and this, what do you mean?
I got you. So basically, the grade C is not specifically linked to getting 9 repair. You can get grade C and get more or less, or you could get a specific grade and there is a range that you can get. So don't believe that just because I got a C this time that I'm going to get 9 repair for a C next time. It's very fluid based on the data that Latalis has found there. So
yes. With 4 repair, my data set shows anywhere between 9 and 12 for a quote C grade, and a lot of that is tied to combo bonus. So if you want to break the car for a tick and try to get us a combo bonus, sure, we can kind of showcase that.
Yeah, we'll hop out of here. We'll actually probably have to let's do a quick scavenge. Let's see if we can get some.
Yeah, showcase the scavenge screen.
Yeah, this is the scavenge mini game that we've talked a little bit about. You can stop on any tick essentially and play this game where you collect stuff off the ground and the zombies try to get you. You can shoot at the zombies, and sometimes that is necessary, but what we've sort of determined is that for the most part, you just want to kite them around and not get caught until potentially you do. So you collect these items, and if you get caught by the zombies, you take a bit of damage and you lose a little bit of what you've collected. But it's sometimes much faster to get what you need and then just get caught by the zombies.
So you walk faster than all the regular zombies. There's one zombie that you don't walk faster than.
Yes, you'll know him because when you look at him, he gets all shy. He's kind of like a Boo from Mario. He's just like, oh, don't look at me.
Yeah. Okay,
the quirky
so we'll
zombie.
Back into the repair mini game here. I'm going to go ahead and do the 8 this time. Oh shoot, hang on.
You're
we gotta
fully
burn off a tick.
repaired.
Yeah.
You
Let's burn off a tick. We'll let a few of these burn off.
Are you on turbo? You're really not taking that much damage. There we go.
Yeah, it's a range.
It's random. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll go ahead and pull into the next town here.
Yeah, on turbo with the UFO, I was taking as little as 2, but as much as 8 in my data.
So here we go to the 8 mini game. So you're going to notice that there's going to be 8 baubles lined up instead of 4. It does take a little bit more time to do it this way.
Yeah, but it is faster than doing 2 4s back to back because you only have to experience that 3-second countdown once to get 8 circles, essentially.
So
So
this
here
there
you can
we-
see. Go ahead.
this is a result
Uh,
that I think for the most part, when you start off, you would be quite happy with, because the minigame is deceivingly difficult sometimes. And I guess, Latalis, do you want to continue on with talking about the combos and the impact and whatnot?
Yeah. So here we see that Ace has got a 2 combo and a 4 combo. And what it does is it takes the underlying values of your hits. So we had perfect, perfect, miss, perfect, perfect, great, okay, near miss. That gave a return of a B rank, which is, again, sort of a range of potential values. But those hits in that order returned a 16. But then you also factor in the combo bonus. 2 plus 4 is another 6. So you actually end up with a lot more potential for bonus repair by doing the 8 scrap minigame compared to, say, the 2 scrap minigame, which can only have a bonus of 2 combo, for example. 4 can only have a bonus of 4 combo. So you get more repair for your time, as we saw, about 1 second repair per, whatchamacallit. And that a lot of that is tied to combo bonuses. And here, actually, Ace has got a pretty good result of 22 repair. And the the most repair you can get from 8, as Uchi showed us, is 8 perfects in a row, which only heals 28. So a B rank isn't that much worse than triple A rank in that regard. So B rank is something any runner should be content with, in my opinion, at least.
So David TKI is in the chat saying another interesting thing is that the scraps tend to be slower the more of them you have.
I don't necessarily think that's true. It might be confirmation bias. That's the reason that I did multiple, on my spreadsheet, I did multiple checks of how long it took me to do the minigame. With 8 scrap, it took me between 17 seconds and 17 and a half seconds. I had one where they were particularly slow, which resulted in 18 and a half seconds, which is bad. But for the most part, the average amount of time it takes to do an 8 scrap is 17 and a half seconds. So, regardless of ball speed, or like factoring that in, essentially.
Okay. Ace, is anything more you want to say on the repair stuff?
I think we've covered it.
Okay. So we are we shot past our time a little bit here. And I'm happy. Like I don't want to rush you folks to stop here. Are there other things that we want to go over at this point? We've definitely given people a lot of information about the how to start off doing the run. There's obviously more on the Discord channel for folks in chat who might not have seen it yet and want to get started. Are there any other, like, right at the gate things people should know starting off the month?
Not really that I can think of. I think we touched on a lot of the core mechanics that people will want to know as they start doing runs and do the endless and unlocking the UFO. That's kind of the crux of, before you can even start doing runs, you need to do that. And a lot of this information we've given them will help them maybe do endless in a single shot instead of 4. And a lot of the more in-depth mechanics we've discovered will be for when they've, gotten used to the actual pace. And again, we're still discovering things. Like we've said, is we're still optimizing which routes we take, when we should change pace. There's a lot to optimize still. And I'm still gathering data on my spreadsheet. I'm updating it regularly. So
I think we
currently
sorry.
looking into scavenging is all I was going to say. Aces.
I think we've given a really great foundation here. We've touched on virtually everything we wanted to. If you have any questions about the things that we've gone over, we probably didn't have time to go in depth here. Zarek has an amazing video about actually completing Endless. My video on Endless just basically is to set you up to be able to do it. Zarek actually walks you through, does the scenes, shows you all the intricacies of actually going from 0 miles to 10,000 miles. So look at that video, look at my video. I've got a video on how to get started for the speed run and what sort of the world record strats we're doing and what my study of that was. And the Discord has a ton of information. Latalis' spreadsheet is getting bigger every day. So it's huge, and it's October 1st. Very exciting.
All right. Well, I'm going to thank you both for being on the channel, talking about all of this and doing all of this work this week and sharing it with everybody. If there are no sort of like last minute questions in chat, I think we're going to wrap it up there and say thank you all of you for stopping by, sort of on short notice to have a chat about the game at the beginning of the month when we haven't done this sort of thing before. If you're interested in board boosters, or if you know it, if you are already a board booster and you know people who might be interested in doing this kind of stuff, being a part of something like this, go ahead and let them know. Go share the link out in chat somewhere or in another Discord, and let's get more people in to do this game this month, because this is an interesting game. I think I've had a conversation with these folks. It's not a high skill cap. It's something that you can get into pretty easily. It's not a really expensive game. It's the first one we had to pay for it, which is I know a barrier for some folks, but it's something that is very fun to be a part of with the whole group, and it's not about like, oh, I want to get the world record and not everyone else. It's like something we're all doing together, and I think this really illustrates that. It's very exciting for me to be a part of, and so let's get out there and share it.
Hell yeah.
So with that, I don't see any other questions, so we're going to go to the end screen here. And again, just thank you for everyone for stopping by.
Thanks for being here, guys.